Alright, after completing 4,000 miles in the E39, we're going to see what went wrong, or what didn't. Now, I'm not going to cheat because that mirror already went off before I left, and before I left the windshield washers quit again, but nothing new there on the E39. So see what kind of things messed up. And the true miracle here is, yeah, it wants an oil service. But no check engine light. Everything's happy. Sounds good. Looks good. Oh, I thought I felt those. Now, misfire on every cylinder. No, 1 through 5. So I thought I felt a few. But, not bad for 4,000 miles. If that's all it had, I can't really complain. Aside from being fairly dirty and needing a really, really killer wash, the car really isn't any worse for wear. However, I did pick up this little guy at some point. I have to get my PDR guy and have him work on it. And then, I don't know where that came from. Then driving through Nashville, I did spot this one when it happened. It had a big old chunk of asphalt bounced over the car, and I suspect it was from that. But aside from that, it's just a little dirty. Still runs happy, still sounds good. Under the hood of the E39, it doesn't look too bad. It needs a solid cleaning, but all in all, I can't really complain. Although it did rain for half the drive, so that may be why. Now, one big complaint about E39 M5s is oil consumption. They love to drink oil. Or do they? The early cars did. The early S62 cars had short skirt racing pistons in them, and they were really bad about drinking oil. This car is a super late production. This is a May of 2003, and they quit production in June of 2003. So this has the updated pistons that the 2001 and well, late 2001 on cars got, and it's got a full charge of oil, and I didn't put a drop in it the whole drive. I did change it right before I left. That oil service warning on the dash is completely irrelevant. This is the longest this car's ever gone without an oil change since I've owned it, and it's only 4,000 miles. I did actually bring a couple of spare parts with me, including a coolant bottle in case that went pop, as they like to do, because I don't know when this one's been changed, but it's fairly recent. The only issue I actually had, aside from the misfires that the DME picked up, was the electric cooling fan, which died about 100 miles from my destination. The way I knew that was what I've seen before. When I bought this car, it would do this. When you went under 40 miles an hour, low speed and high ambient temperature, the temperature gauge would creep up. You get towards the 3/4 mark, and as soon as you got moving, it'd come right back to normal. I've had that before, and I was sitting in traffic, and I looked down, and I saw the temperature gauge climbing. Thankfully, we got moving pretty quickly, and it was not an issue. And I was able to order one from my friends at FCP Euro. I love FCP. But they sent me one. They had it, I was able to get it 2-day shipped, changed it out in the driveway, which is always fun. Slapped a new one in there, and away we go. Now, my only complaint is that cooling fan was only 3 years old and quit. However, it was the non-OEM BMW that looks identical to the OEM BMW one because it's a third of the price. But FCP's got a lifetime warranty, so I don't have to think about that ever again. But always something to keep an eye on E39 M5s and E39s in general, actually. If the temperature starts to creep up at low speed and high ambient temperature, but comes down as soon as you move, it is probably the electric pusher fan. This aftermarket one and the last one that was in it tend to make a lot of noise. It sounds like a jet aircraft when you shut the car down, but that tells me it's working. So I'm okay with it being a little noisy. But aside from that, car's pretty much perfect. Well, I said E39s, M5s don't burn oil if you get a later model one, but they certainly leak it. They always leak it. I've pretty much just accepted that. But overall, this looks good. I did replace the motor mounts before I left, and they look pretty much perfect. Now, one thing I did notice that started happening is under braking, when I just touched the brakes, the steering wheel would shake back and forth very slowly. And this idler arm is the culprit again. I replaced that not that long ago with an aftermarket one, but it seems like these aftermarket ones just can't do the job. So maybe time for a genuine BMW version, because that's got less than 10,000 miles on it. But everything else looks pretty good. Most of these arms have already been done before by me. I did also replace tires before I left, and they look pretty excellent actually. And you can just make out where it says Hankook still in the tire, which speaks pretty well for the alignment, because that usually disappears pretty much immediately. About 5,000 miles is pretty excellent. Now I also noticed back here, got a little bit of a grease spray going on. I think it's this rear drive shaft bushing. Yeah. It's probably got a little more life left in it, but not much based on the grease. That's okay, I don't drive this car all that much. But everything else looks good. All the links and arms look good. Don't see any other issues. Debo looks good. Fun fact with this particular car, this car had the transmission replaced at 95,000 miles with a factory new transmission. So this one's only got about 30,000 miles on it, which is great. But everything looks pretty darn good, aside from that stupid idler arm, which on these E39 M5s and the 540s with the V8 have this very silly old school drag link steering. It feels a little funny to drive, but does work quite well. The difference between the M5 and the 540 being that little servo there with the white tag on it, which is this guy right here. That is the servotronic valve. So when you put it in sport mode, it changes the feel of the steering. In the 540s, don't have that, or don't all have that. I've yet to run into a 540 that does have it. But everything else is excellent on this thing, if not a little dirty. Still plenty of life left on the brakes. Well, all in all, a fantastic road trip car, especially if you have the skills to do at least a few basic things to keep it alive on the drive. I've got to replace some splash shields because these are getting bad. But it's an E39 M5. There's always something to do. Alright, this is the fan in question. This is the pusher fan that goes in front of the AC condenser and the radiator. Without it, there isn't enough airflow at low speed because of the fan clutch on the mechanical fan. If that goes, two things happen. The air conditioning is terrible at low speed because there's no airflow across the condenser, and your engine temperature will climb. S62s, being a race-derived engine, are a little more tolerant of heat, but it's still a BMW, and heat is not its friend. If that fan's not running, you have a problem. Thanks for watching. I'm going to leave you with a little bit of S62 exhaust.